husband drove me to the trailhead with a smile I hadn't seen in 2 years. He kissed my forehead, handed me my pack, and said, "You deserve this." I was halfway up the first switchback when a park ranger stepped out from behind a pine tree and said, quietly, like he didn't want anyone else to hear, "Ma'am, don't go up there. Your husband was on this trail yesterday, without you." I didn't understand what that meant yet. I do now. 3 months ago, I was a 31-year-old physical therapist named Lisa. I had a caseload of 18 patients, a golden retriever named Biscuit, who slept across my feet every night, and a husband I'd been with since I was 23. His name is Ronan. We met in a coffee shop in Asheville, North Carolina, the kind of meeting that feels scripted. He bumped into me, spilled my drink, looked mortified, and spent the next 20 minutes apologizing while I laughed. We got married in September 2019. In my aunt's backyard, strung lights and the oak trees danced barefoot in the grass. By the time he drove me to Ridgeback Mountain State Park on that Saturday morning in August, I hadn't laughed like that in a long time. The trip was his idea. He came home one Tuesday in early July with brochures spread across the kitchen table. Ridgeback Mountain, a 3-day solo hiking retreat for clarity and renewal. His words, I was suspicious. Not because I thought anything was wrong, but because Ronan had never once in 8 years suggested I do something alone. His whole language of love had always been together. Vacations together. Dinners together. Even grocery shopping together. "You've been burning out," he said. "You need the mountains. Just you, no phone calls, no patience." He reached across the table, covered my hand with his. His palm was cold. I noticed, and I pushed the noticing away. I said yes because I was exhausted, because my father had died 14 months earlier. Heart attack, no warning, a Wednesday morning, and I had not stopped moving since. 14 months of covering his affairs, selling his house in Raleigh, managing the estate. He had no other family. Everything went to me, the house proceeds, his 401k, the life insurance payout, $1.4 million total, which I deposited into our joint account because Ronan said it made sense for tax purposes, and I was too hollowed out to argue. I should have argued. The morning he drove me to the trailhead, I almost didn't go. Ronan was rushing, loading my pack into the trunk before I finished my coffee, checking his watch every few minutes, drumming his fingers on the steering wheel the entire 40-minute drive. I asked him twice if he was okay. "Fine," he said both times, not looking at me. He pulled up to the Ridgeback Mountain Trailhead parking lot at 8:14 a.m. I know because I checked my phone. I was about to text my best friend Paula to let her know I'd arrived when Ronan took my phone out of my hand. "You said no screens," he said. That was the point. He was right. I had said that. But I hadn't said it for him to take my phone. I reached for it. He dropped it in the center console, out of reach. "You'll thank me later," he said. He lifted my pack from the trunk himself. Wouldn't let me help. He set it on my shoulders, buckled the chest strap, and tightened it to the point of uncomfortable. "It'll loosen up," he said. He kissed my forehead. He told me he loved me. He watched me start up the trail. I turned back once, 30 feet in. He was standing beside the car watching me, hands in his pockets, not like a husband seeing his wife off, like someone confirming a delivery. I kept walking. I made it about 6 minutes up the first switchback before Ranger Owen Torres stepped out from the tree line. He was maybe 50, sun-worn, with a name tag clipped to a green vest. He held up one hand, palm out. Not aggressive, just stop. "Ma'am." He spoke quietly, glancing past me toward the parking lot. "Is that your husband? Gray Subaru, tan jacket?" I looked back. Ronan was still there, still watching. "Yes." My voice came out smaller than I intended. "Why?" Owen Torres looked at me for a moment, the way people look when they're deciding how much to say. "He was on his trail yesterday," he said, "alone. He asked a lot of questions about cell coverage up at Lakeview Ridge, about whether search and rescue response times were longer on weekends, about the drop on the North Face." He paused. "Ma'am, how long have you been married?" The ground felt uneven. 8 years, I said. He nodded slowly. "I need you to come with me." The ranger station was a single-room building 20 yards off the main trail. Owen Torres sat across from me at a folding table. A woman named Deb, his supervisor, stood by the door. Between them, they told me what they'd observed the day before: Ronan, hiking alone, stopping at 3 different points on the trail to photograph something, not the view, the terrain, the drop-offs, the edges. He talked to 2 of our trail volunteers, Owen said. Asked one of them what the response protocol was if someone went off the north face. Said he was asking for a friend who was coming to hike. He said she had a history of balance problems, Deb added. That she sometimes got dizzy on elevation. I don't have balance problems. I've never had balance problems. I've hiked a dozen trails harder than Ridgeback Mountain. Deb was watching my face. Is any of that true? No. She put a hand on the radio clipped to her belt. I'd like to call the county sheriff's office. I'd like you to stay here until they arrive. Is that okay? I thought about the gray Subaru in the parking lot. I thought about the phone in the center console. I thought about Ronan's hands on the steering wheel, bone white the whole drive up. Yes, I said, call them. Detective Alicia Marsh from the Henderson County Sheriff's Office arrived in 40 minutes. She was 38, sharp-eyed, with a methodical way of asking questions that made me feel like every answer I gave was being filed in a very organized cabinet. She started with the basics. How long had we been married? Did we have life insurance? Had there been any recent changes in our financial situation? When I told her about my father's estate, her expression didn't change, but she wrote something down. $1.4 million, she repeated. And it's in a joint account? Yes. Ronan handles the finances. He's better at it than I am. He was the one who set up the account structure after my father died. She asked for the name of our bank. She asked for Ronan's full name, his employer, whether he had any debts I knew of. I knew about the business loan. Ronan had started a small outdoor equipment company in 2021, Summit and Scale, and had taken out a $120,000 SBA loan. It was struggling. He'd mentioned twice that the interest payments were eating them alive. I hadn't pressed. Has he ever suggested divorce? Detective Marsh asked. I paused. He said once last March that if things didn't improve between us, he didn't see a future. My voice felt strange saying it out loud. I suggested couples counseling. He said it was too expensive. She wrote that down too. Mrs. Hargrove. Please don't call me that. The words came out before I could stop them. That's his name. I kept my own. I'm Lisa Callum. She corrected herself without comment. Lisa. I'm going to ask your permission to pull some financial records. Bank transactions, insurance documents, anything associated with your name and your husband's name. Do I have your consent? Yes. I barely heard my own voice. Whatever you need. What she found took 40 minutes. Ronan had taken out a life insurance policy on me in November of last year, 4 months after my father died, while I was still disoriented with grief, still signing forms without reading them. I had no memory of any policy. Detective Marsh pulled the application on her laptop and turned the screen toward me. There was my name. There was my date of birth. There was a signature. It was not my signature. I know my signature. I'm left-handed and there's a leftward slant to everything I write. A particular way I form the L in Lisa that curls back in on itself. The L on that application was upright. Vertical. Printed almost. That's forged, I said. I know, Detective Marsh said. The policy was for $900,000. Ronan was the sole beneficiary. It had been active for 9 months. There's more, she said. She pulled up the joint bank account. The $1.4 million my father left me had been, over the course of 14 months, reduced to $47,000. The money had gone in large withdrawals, $5,000, $8,000, $12,000 at a time, to a business account under Summit and Scale, and from there to what appeared to be personal cryptocurrency purchases through an exchange called Nordvault. Ronan had gambled away my father's life savings on crypto, and then, rather than tell me, he'd insured my life and brought me to a mountain with steep drop-offs and no cell coverage on a weekend when search and rescue response times were slower. Detective Marsh closed the laptop. Lisa, she said carefully, your husband is still in the parking lot. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was 9:47 a.m. I had been in the ranger station for 91 minutes. He's been calling the Trailhead office phone, Owen said from the corner. 4 times in the last hour, he paused. He asked if anyone had seen a woman with a blue pack. They moved me to the sheriff's substation in the town of Mills Creek, 20 minutes from the park. I sat in a room that smelled like burnt coffee and old carpet while Detective Marsh made calls. A deputy named Felton brought me a water bottle and a granola bar and didn't ask any questions, which I was grateful for. My father's face kept surfacing. The way he used to sit at his kitchen table on Sunday mornings with his crossword puzzle, pencil behind his ear. The way he looked at Ronan at our wedding, proud, trusting, glad, because he'd spent my whole childhood worried I'd end up with someone who didn't deserve me. He died believing I was safe. I pressed my hand over my mouth and stared at the water bottle until I could breathe normally. At 11:30 a.m., Detective Marsh came back in and sat down across from me. "We've been in contact with your husband," she said. "He left the parking lot at 10:15. He's home now. He doesn't know you're here." She folded her hands on the table. "He texted your phone 22 times between 9 and 11. We have your phone. Do you want to see them?" I said yes. The texts ranged from "just checking in, how's the trail," to "I'm getting worried, can you call the station?" to at 10:47 a.m., "I love you so much. You're going to have the most amazing time. Text me when you get to camp." She watched me read them. "He thinks you're on the mountain. He thinks I'm gonna fall off the mountain," I said. Her jaw tightened slightly. "Yes, that's what we believe too. What do we do now?" Detective Marsh looked at me steadily. "We'd like you to let him keep believing that. For 72 hours, maybe less. We're going to put you in a safe location, and we're going to watch him. People who think they've committed a crime get careless. He'll move money. He'll contact someone. He'll do something we can document." She paused. "Can you do that?" I thought about the wedding, the oak trees, the bare feet in the grass. "Yes," I said, "I can do that." They put me in a motel outside Mills Creek, room 112, ground floor, with a view of the parking lot and a lock that Detective Marsh personally tested twice before she left. She gave me a burner phone with one number saved, hers, and told me not to contact anyone. Not Paola, not my coworkers, not anyone. For the next 36 hours, I watched the world happen on a laptop they'd set up with a live feed from 2 cameras, one inside our house, one trained on the driveway. Ronan came home at 1:80 p.m. on Saturday. He walked in, put his keys on the counter, stood in the kitchen for a long moment, and then went upstairs. 20 minutes later, he came back down, showered and changed, poured himself a whiskey, and sat on the couch with his phone. He didn't cry. He didn't look at photos of me. He didn't call anyone to say his wife was missing on a mountain trail. He opened his laptop. Detective Marsh, sitting beside me in the motel room, leaned forward. "What's he doing?" Felton, running the feed from the sheriff's office, typed something. A moment later, he's on the Nordvault site, the crypto exchange. He's logging into an account. "Can you see what he's doing? Transferring something?" A pause. "He's moving funds out, consolidating balances." Ronan was reorganizing money while he thought I was dead on a hiking trail. "He's getting ready to run," Detective Marsh said quietly. At 4:30 p.m. on Sunday, Ronan called a man named Declan. We didn't know who Declan was until Marsh ran the number. Declan Voss, 34, listed address in Raleigh. Worked in financial consulting, 2 prior fraud charges, both dropped. They were on the phone for 11 minutes. I couldn't hear Declan's side, but I heard Ronan's. "She doesn't know anything. She never checked the accounts, not once." A pause. "If something happened on the trail, the coverage up there is terrible on weekends. Search and rescue won't even go up until Monday. I'd have the insurance claim filed by Tuesday." Another pause. I said I'd handle it. "I always handle it." He hung up. He looked at his phone, and then he smiled. Not big, just a small pull at the corner of his mouth. I pressed the back of my hand against my lips. Detective Marsh put her hand on my shoulder without looking away from the screen. "We have him," she said. At 9 a.m. on Monday, they arrested Declan Voss at his apartment in Raleigh. He had no outstanding warrants, but he had a lot of records on the laptop the FBI flagged through a financial fraud parallel investigation. Nordvault was already under scrutiny for money laundering. Declan had been helping Ronan move the money, taking a percentage, routing it through shell accounts. When the FBI agent, a woman named Special Agent Tess Wong, showed him the phone records and the wire transfers, Declan talked. He said Ronan had come to him 11 months ago, broke and desperate. The equipment company was failing. The loan was due. He'd already moved most of my inheritance, but the crypto had collapsed, and what was left was barely enough to cover what he owed. Declan had suggested the insurance policy as a way out. If something happened to your wife on one of those hiking trips she does, it'd cover everything and then some. Ronan had taken 3 weeks to agree. The plan at Ridgeback Mountain wasn't a push, too risky, too obvious. The plan was exposure. My pack had been weighed down with added gear, heavier than I'd expect. There was a canteen in the bottom pocket laced with something that would have made me dizzy within 2 hours. Disoriented, unsteady on elevation. I would have been alone, without cell coverage, on a trail with a north-facing drop, and by the time search and rescue found me Monday morning, it would have looked exactly like what Ronan had told the trail volunteers, a woman with balance problems who lost her footing. When Agent Wong described the canteen, I thought about the way he'd tightened my chest strap at the trailhead, adjusted the buckles carefully, made sure the pack was settled just so. I had to leave the room. They arrested Ronan at 6:47 p.m. on Monday evening. I was there. Detective Marsh had asked if I wanted to be, and I'd said yes before she finished the sentence, then spent the next 3 hours wondering if that was a mistake. It wasn't. 2 deputies and Detective Marsh went in first. I stood at the edge of the driveway, in the space between the streetlight and the dark, and waited. The front door opened. They walked him out. He saw me from the porch steps. The sound he made, it wasn't a word, just the short, cut-off exhale, like someone had knocked the air out of him. His face went gray. He looked at me the way you look at something that should not exist. A ghost. A miscalculation. I walked up the driveway. Detective Marsh stepped back to let me. "The canteen," I said, "in my pack." His mouth opened. "You weighed it down too," I said. "The extra gear. The books I didn't pack. I'd figured it out in the motel room, going back through it, remembering the way the pack had felt wrong on my shoulders. How long did you plan this?" "Lisa." His voice broke on my name. "You don't understand how much debt." "I understand how much debt." "I understand exactly." I kept my voice even, the way I talk to patients in pain, calm and clear so they can hear me. "You lost my father's money, and instead of telling me, you decided I was worth more dead than alive. I didn't. You laced my canteen." He looked at his hands. Detective Marsh moved forward. "Mr. Hargrove." She read him his rights in the yellow light of the porch. He didn't look at me again. They put him in the back of the car. I stood in the driveway for a long time after it left. He pled not guilty. His trial began 4 months later. Paula sat behind me every single day. She found out the Monday after the arrest when Detective Marsh finally allowed me to call. She'd been the one who, 2 days earlier, had called the ranger station asking if anyone had seen a woman with a blue pack, because I'd told her the park name before we left. She'd called. They put her through to Owen Torres. He told her I was safe. She didn't tell me that until after the verdict, because she knew if I'd heard it while I was still in that motel room watching Ronan reorganize money, I would have done something that would have ruined the case. The prosecution's star witness was Declan Voss, who accepted a plea deal for reduced charges and testified in detail about every conversation he'd had with Ronan over 11 months. He described the Nordvault transfers. He described the insurance policy scheme. He described the specific conversation when Ronan said, "I need it to look like an accident. Hiking accidents happen all the time. She goes alone and nobody questions it." The defense argued Ronan had been suffering from depression, that the crypto investments were poor judgment, not malice, that there was no proof he'd tampered with the canteen. The canteen had his fingerprints on it. The substance inside was confirmed by the lab, scopolamine, a disorienting agent, the kind that causes dizziness, confusion, and impaired balance at high elevation. The jury deliberated for 6 days. On a Thursday morning in December, in a courtroom that smelled like floor wax and old wood, the foreperson, a woman named Chloe, early 40s, who had watched me testify for 2 hours without looking away, stood and read the verdict. Guilty. Attempted first-degree murder. Guilty. Insurance fraud. Guilty. Wire fraud. Guilty. Theft by deception. Ronan sat very still. He didn't look at me. I cried in the hallway, not because I was sad, but because I had been carrying the weight of almost dying for 4 months and I hadn't let myself put it down yet. Paola held me up. Owen Torres, who had driven 3 hours to be there, shook my hand and said very quietly, "I'm glad you listened." The sentencing was 6 weeks later. I asked to make a statement. I stood at the podium in a room that had gotten quieter than any room I'd ever stood in. And I looked at the judge and I said, "My father worked for 30 years so that I would be safe. He calculated for every risk. He bought a good life insurance policy. He invested carefully. He worried about me. And he died trusting that the man I'd married was going to keep me safe in his place." I paused. My husband didn't just try to kill me. He spent 14 months stealing from my father's memory, and then he tried to cover it up with my death. He thought he was smarter than everyone. He thought I would never notice. He thought that if I disappeared on a mountain trail on a Saturday morning, everyone would shake their heads and say, "What a tragedy, she had balance problems." I turned and looked at Ronan for the first time. "I don't have balance problems," I said. "I never did. You just needed me to." The judge sentenced him to 25 years. He'll be 63 when he's first eligible for parole. The first thing I did after sentencing was call my father's sister, my Aunt Bertine, who lives in a house outside Brevard with a back porch that looks at the same mountains I'd almost died on. I drove down that weekend. We sat on the porch and drank iced tea, and she didn't ask me to explain anything. She just said, "Your daddy would have been furious. He would also have been so proud of you." I cried. She let me. It's been 8 months since the sentencing. I moved into a small rental house in West Asheville with Biscuit, who has no idea anything happened and simply continues sleeping across my feet every night, which is the greatest gift. I go back to work 3 days a week. I see a therapist named Dr. Kezia Moore every Tuesday. She doesn't push me to move faster than I can. She asks, most sessions, a single question. "What do you know today that you didn't know last week?" Last week, I knew that I could drive past the turnoff for Ridgeback Mountain without my hands shaking. This week, I know I want to go back. Not to that trail, but to the mountains. To stand at an overlook and see the drop-off that was supposed to end me and breathe and still be standing. I'm not there yet, but I'm not where I was. A month ago, I got an email from a woman named Genevieve. She said she'd followed my case in the news. She said her ex-husband had done something similar. Not a mountain, but a boat and a lake, and a propeller accident that the insurance company had questioned for years without enough evidence to prosecute. She'd been waiting for someone to go through what I went through and come out the other side because she needed to know it was possible. I wrote back the same night. I've gotten 43 emails like hers since the trial ended. Women who recognize something in the story. The slow financial erosion. The way the person who was supposed to be safe became the danger. The moment they realized they hadn't been the only one keeping count. I don't have answers for all of them. I don't have a nonprofit yet, though Paola and I have been talking. I don't have a book, though I've been writing. What I have is this. I'm alive. I'm still here. And I know now, with the specific certainty of someone who almost wasn't, that survival is not a passive thing. It requires being witnessed. It requires someone, somewhere to say, wait, something is wrong here, and to mean it. Owen Torres meant it. I'm trying to mean it too. 3 things I know now that I didn't know when I was standing at that trailhead with the pack that weighed too much and a phone that had been taken from me. Trust the thing in your body that says this is wrong. I had that feeling every single day for 2 years, and I talked myself out of it every single time because love is not supposed to feel like a threat, and believing it did felt like a failure. It wasn't failure. It was information. Listen to it earlier than I did. Know where your money is. I handed over every financial decision because I was grieving and it was easier, and that is how he did what he did. I'm not saying trust no one. I'm saying your name on an account means you should know what's in it. It means looking once in a while without apology. The people who save you are usually quiet about it. Owen Torres didn't make a scene. He stepped out from behind a tree and he spoke low and he asked me to come with him. He wasn't dramatic. He wasn't certain. He just noticed something that felt wrong and he chose not to ignore it. Most of the good that happened to me came from someone who made that choice. If you're in a position to make that choice for someone else, make it. It is worth more than you know. I'm going back to Ridgeback Mountain next spring. Paola is coming with me. We're going to hike to Lakeview Ridge, the overlook where the coverage goes out and the drop on the north face catches the afternoon light and looks, from above, like the edge of the entire world. I'm going to stand there. I'm going to look at the view. And I'm going to be the person who comes back down. I've thought a lot about the word trust since all of this happened. Not in a romantic way. Not in the way I used to think about it when Ronan and I were 23 and 25 and everything felt like it was just beginning. I mean, trust as a practical thing, a choice you make and make again, and have to be honest about whether you're making it based on evidence or based on what you need to believe. I needed to believe a lot of things that weren't true. I needed to believe Ronan was handling the money carefully because I was too tired and too gutted by grief to look at it myself. I needed to believe the unease I felt every time he rushed me or took my phone or answered a call in another room was just anxiety, mine, always mine, and not information about him. That need cost me $1.4 million and almost cost me everything else. What I know now is that need isn't a reason. Needing something to be safe doesn't make it safe, and the longer you let that need do your thinking for you, the more distance you put between yourself and what's actually happening. Ronan counted on that distance. He built his entire plan inside it. There's a thing I've noticed since the trial, talking to other women who reached out, the ones like Genevieve, the ones who recognized their own story and mine. Almost all of them say some version of the same thing. I knew something was wrong, but I kept talking myself out of it. And they're not naive women. They're smart, capable, observant people, but they've been trained, slowly and deliberately, to distrust their own perception. That's not an accident. That's how it works. The intelligence that saved me wasn't mine alone. It was Owen Torres noticing something felt off and deciding not to walk past it. It was Detective Marsh asking the right questions in the right order without flinching. It was Paola calling the ranger station because 2 days of silence felt wrong to her and she trusted that feeling over my earlier reassurances. Every single turning point in this story came from someone choosing to take their own instincts seriously instead of explaining them away. That's the thing about accountability. It runs in both directions. Ronan made choices one after another over 14 months. Each one compounded the last. The first lie made the second one necessary. The stolen money made the insurance policy necessary. The insurance policy made the mountain necessary. He didn't become someone who would lace his wife's canteen overnight. He got there by agreeing again and again to take the easier wrong thing over the harder honest one. That's not fate, that's arithmetic. And on my side, I got out because I finally let myself be helped. Because I didn't argue when Owen Torres said, "Come with me." Because I said yes when Detective Marsh asked for consent to pull the records. That's not heroism. That's just stopping. Stopping the explaining, stopping the protecting, stopping the pretending that everything is probably fine, and letting the truth have room to exist. I'm still learning to do that in smaller ways every day. To look at things as they are, to say I don't know instead of filling the silence with reassurance, to let people who care about me see me clearly, not just the version of me that's holding it together. Biscuit is asleep on my feet as I write this. Paola texted me this morning. Owen Torres sent a postcard from his retirement trip to the Outer Banks last month. These small, ordinary things are the whole point. They are what Ronan was willing to extinguish. And they are what I get to keep.